beautiful.
Rivka. Sarah Keller.
Absent.
Huh?
Absent, she's not been with you.
Sarah Goldenberg. Is that?
You know, just like. Running me on the
Circa. Iyar.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to be doing another Sicha from chapter 3 this time of Pirkei Avot, the ethics of our fathers, taken from volume 17 of the Rebbe Sichos. Volume 17 in the back, you have a whole bunch of Sichos about Pirkei Avot. This is another Sicha concerning Perek Shlishi, the third Perek. And there's also English translation of the Mishnah, just the Mishnah, not the whole Sicha, just the Mishnah. I'm going to give it out. I'll pass it down. This is just a decorative.
Are there any good online copies of Sichos?
Sure there are. I'm not good at these things.
Because they need to make a digital book of these.
There are books that, but not on Pirkei Avot as far as I mean, there are, but not.
Because it would be great to read them, but it's
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, I agree. This Sicha, in general, we learn a Sicha of Pirkei Avot. We often hear the Rebbe saying three things. Number one, Pirkei Avot is not for basics, for people who want to just keep the basic laws of Yiddishkeit, but those who want to go above and beyond the letter of the law. Milsud da Chasidusa deals with matters that relate to Hasidim. Number two, the Rebbe also often answers questions by looking at the precise wording that the Tana of the Mishnah chose to say. Non-conventional words sometimes don't seem to be the right way of saying things, the normal way of saying things. And that is an alarm. That wakes you up. Why did he use these words? Number three, the way the Mishnah is broken down. In other words, every Mishnah has its beginning and its end. And you don't just put two Mishnahs together. It's divided. And with precision, with perfection, with thought, thinking things through, they decided that this Mishnah ends over here, and the next Mishnah is a different subject. Doesn't belong in the same Mishnah with the first one. Why is that so important? Why is that so important to know where the Mishnah ends and we're going to learn anyways the next Mishnah? What do I care if the next Mishnah would be put together with the first Mishnah? So the Rebbe says it has halachic ramifications.
Sorry, Rabbi.
A name like that, wow, Rotem. Okay.
Sorry, Rabbi.
You should be sorry.
I know. I know. I'm really sorry.
Go on then. No. No. Just joking. You have to get something, you have to say some, jokes to get people listening.
Do rabbis join a secret club when their beard becomes fully white? I feel like
Is that
this could be a
connected
level of
with, is that
wisdom.
connected with the color hat that I wear?
Yeah, and like, is there a secret?
You have
rabbi
a
handshake?
certain direction of, certain, method of questions. that
Thank
are-
you. It's
But-
very important to know.
I know, I can see how important it
Thank you.
is. I'll tie that into the season.
All right, thank you.
Call it a beard. Okay, we'll try to fit that into the season.
Yeah, because like some of my rabbis, I'm just like, you're very knowledgeable, but I don't know if I would have trusted you with like a different color beard.
That's very, very, very profound indeed.
The hat doesn't
Okay.
make the rabbi makes the hat.
Yeah. Okay. Baruch Simcha is here.
Yes.
Where's Baruch Simcha? You're Baruch Simcha. Okay, keep forgetting. I'm sorry. And so far. Yeah. Sorry. Oh, Maya. How are you? You're always so quiet, like your neighbor on your right. I don't know who's quiet, but you're both very quiet. And you like to learn, but siag lachach mashnika says that silence can bring a person to a very high madrega, very high level.
This table makes up for their quietness.
Okay, what I want to do, so again, I forgot that, yeah, so there's halachic ramifications. Listen to this, there's a halachic ramification. Then again, halacha, to know where the Mishnah ends and where the next Mishnah begins. Man marries a woman and he says, I am going to be Mekadesh, I'm going to marry you, I want you to be married to me on the condition that I happen to be a Mishnah knower. I know Mishnayos. I'm an expert in Mishnah. So the Gemara asks, how many Mishnayos do you have to know for us to call him an expert? Not that many, 3. But if we're going to, we're going to put, sorry? Oh, no glasses, can't see. Can't even hear without my glasses. Oh. If we're going to put a lot of material in one Mishnah, right? It'll make a difference because he has to know 3 Mishnahs, right? So 3 Mishnahs mean 3 separate Mishnahs. You have put one of the 3 together with the other, to make one long Mishnah, it's only going to count for 1 instead of 2. So it's important to know halachically. If a person says, it's not going to happen today, person says to his wife, the wife to be, Hareyat Mekudeshesli, you are married to me on the condition that you are a Mishnah expert. The person has to know 3 Mishnahs. So the Alter Rebbe was very careful in the breakdown of the Mishnahs. What's Mishnah 1? What's Mishnah 2? What's Mishnah 3? Don't consider all these 3 Mishnahs as one, but rather break them down into 3. So we're going to find a problem here with Mishnah in chapter 3. There are 2 Mishnahs, 2 different subjects altogether that are put together as one Mishnah. And the question is, what's the flow? Before we get to that, I want to just mention one thing. I'm not going to talk a lot like I usually do about the Midah. We're talking about a week now. This is the week of Netzach, in the 4th week of Sfiras Omer, right? So I'm not going to elaborate at all. I'll leave that for later, if there is a later, if we have time. What is Netzach? What does Netzach mean? What is it all about? And then what is Tiferes about Netzach? Because today's spirit. What is Netzach? Anyone know? How would you translate Netzach?
Victory.
Victory. Any other translation? Endurance. Very good. Perseverance. Endurance. Persevere means to break through all kinds of obstacles, not allow yourself to falter. It's when usually you need this when you had some inspiration and the inspiration wore off. You were inspired, you had a real good Farbrengen or a Yontif, and then you don't feel it anymore. But during Yontif, you made a hachlata, you made a resolution that even after Yontif, I know I'm not going to be as inspired as I am right now. What if I'm bringing? Wow, but it's gonna wear off. I'm making a resolve to keep doing what I should be doing based on the feeling I have now, even if I'm going to lose that juice later on. So Netzach is like a spare tire that when you run out of gas, run out of juice, emotion, passion to something, because you made that hachlata, I will do, whether I like it or not later, I will. That's Netzach. Persevering, it also has the meaning of eternity. Well, Netzach means forever. It means victory. You're victorious because you're fighting. You're always in a fighting mode. You're victorious, and you believe you can be victorious even before you start the fight. The belief we can win, the optimistic view. And it also has to do with eternity. Why? Because unless, if you don't have netzach, you just have chesed, wow, I'm in a real good, loving mood. It's such a, Yiddishkeit is so beautiful, it's so impressive, it's so, inspiring. But it doesn't last. It's not netzach. Netzach is the ability to keep the passion, keep what you had before, keep your resolutions going, even when you lose momentum. So it's called netzach because it creates eternity in your avodas Hashem. But then there's chesed shebenetzach, gevura shebenetzach, tiferes shebenetzach. So for that, I want to leave that for later, if there is a later. My record is I never finish anything, so let's see if we can even finish a Sichos. That would be a chiddush. We might even have to make a shechiyanu with Hashem's name. We should finish. It's all my fault, no one else's fault. So, no. Okay. Now you have the English also. See the English. First see the English, and we'll get to the Hebrew, of course. Look at the English, which is at the end, or all your copies, the last 2 pages. I underlined Mishnah Bays, and you're going to see now in Mishnah Bays 2 distinct subjects have nothing to do with each other. Weird. And you're going to also see, what? This is for Hasidim? This is universal. It's not only for Jews who are but keep the basics. This is for any person, any human being would understand this. Why is this put in Pirkei Avos? Weird. And what's it doing with the second part of this Mishnah, which does deal with Jewish people sitting and learning a chavrusa? You'll soon see what we're talking about. So look at the Mishnah Bays 2. See what it says 2? Rabbi Chanina was called Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim. The deputy of the high priest said, pray for the welfare of the kingdom, or the government. For were it not for the fear of it, a man would swallow his fellow alive. Okay. It doesn't say a man would kill his friend, murder, or steal, or rob, which is conventional, normal. It says he would swallow his fellow alive. Are we talking about cannibals over here? What do you mean swallow his fellow alive? Why use that non-conventional term? Yeah? Make sense? Yeah?
Yeah.
Alka?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What? I don't need to have a comment for everything, Rabbi.
How often do I do that to you? First time, I think it's the first time ever.
Do you want me to make jokes more? Because I can.
No, I know. We'll leave that for later.
All right.
Good. Now, you understand what's going on here? It's a weird. Look at the next Mishnah. Not the next Mishnah, the next part of this Mishnah. It should be really 3. Rabbi Chanina ben Teravyon, who was a martyr, by the way, one of the 10 martyrs, said, when 2 people sit together, Torah learning, chavrusas, and no words of Torah are exchanged between them, they are a company of scoffers. As it says, he does not sit in the company of scoffers. Rather, his desire is the Torah of God. But if 2 people sit together and do exchange words of Torah, the divine presence rests between them. As it says, that the God-fearing converse, then the God-fearing conversed. A man with his fellow, a person who was very God-fearing, and he conversed, he was talking with his fellow Kabrusa, and Hashem listens, God listens, and heard, the pasuk in Malachi, and heard, and continuing on the next page, and book of remembrance was written before him. Hashem puts it in his diary for those who fear God and meditate upon his name. From this verse, we learn only that it is so with regard to 2 people. From where do we learn that even when one person is engaged in Torah? Okay, so we have another pasuk for that. That's not part of the Sikha, actually. Now, the obvious questions you can see already is, why is the first part of this Mishnah in Pirkei Avos? Why does he use the words, if not for the fear of the leadership of the country, the king, people would be killing, right? Or murder, or stealing, robbing, Yeah. And over the summer a couple of years ago, Vildachai, when there's no be free for all, no police, goodbye. Anarchy reigns. Why use the word people would be swallowing each other? What's the significance of swallowing? It's not just, eating. It doesn't mean that we will actually, start eating each other, literally. So why use that expression? And number 3, what's the flow between the first part of the Mishnah, right, and the second part of the Mishnah, talking about 2 people learning, not exchanging Torah. What does it have to do with make sure to daven, to pray hard for the well-being of the kingdom of the country, the leadership of the country? What's the connection? What's the flow? So that's the Rebbe's questions over here. And the Rebbe's answer is very, very powerful, very beautiful. Let's see the Sikha inside in the Hebrew now. Shlilas ish es re'eu chaim blo. The negating, excluding the idea of a man to his friend will swallow each other alive. How is that midas chasidus? How in the world is that an attribute of a chassid that has to be taught this thing? He was a deputy, he was an assistant to the Kohen Gadol. He says the following: Havei, you shall be mispalel, praying, davening, b'shlomo shel malchus, the well-being of the kingdom or the government. Ilmale mora, if not for its fear of authority. Ish esre'eu chaim b'lo, in Hebrew, a man to his fellow friend, even not to a stranger you don't like, even your neighbor, your friend, you would swallow that person alive. So we have to understand a number of things here. But tzarich lahavim, we have to understand. The Rebbe asks 3 questions. Chazal are sages. Chazal stands for Chachamenu Zichronam Livracha. Chazal Omrim, our sages say in Tractate Bava Kama. Here are Aramaic words. Man debo elameve chasida, ever once. Man means whom. Deboi once. Lemehebe, to be a chasid, chasida, Aramaic. Here comes the Hebrew. Lekayem, let him fulfill. Mili de avos, the teachings, the matters that are taught in Pirkei Avot. In Hebrew, translating in Hebrew, harotzeh liyot chasid, yikayem et hanemar bePirkei Avot. Okay. Kolomar, in other words, the Sechet Avos, the tractate of Avos, the Sechet this Masechta, Murkeves, is composed, is comprised, made up of, Murkav, Mimili de Chafiduso, which are Divrei Chafidut, Hanhagot, behavior patterns, She'enon Mechoyavois Mitzaradin, that are not mandated by law. That law does not, Shulchan Aruch does not dictate you have to do these things. But Yeshla Soison only mitzad chasidus. You should do them only if you really want to be a chassid. Lifnim mishurat hadin. You want to go beyond the letter of the law. A good example of a mishnah that's clearly not basic halacha, but it's clearly geared for someone who wants to go beyond the letter of the law is the first mishnah of this chapter. Reflect, ponder, think deeply about 3 things, and you won't even come to the temptation to sin. We're not discussing person whether sin or not, but we're trying to avoid even a temptation for anything wrong. That's a chassid. He doesn't want to even have the Yetzer Hara. He wants to make sure that this thing will never bother him. He won't even have the thought of sinning. What are the 3 things? You know what they are? Anyone know? Da, ma. Yeah. That was that's not what it is. I told you. What's the first one? No, is not one of 3. I mean, that's my mistake.
Hashem is always watching over you.
That's not. Okay, that's the 3rd one. The first one is where you come from, a putrid drop.
Oh, where
you come from, where you're heading to, and to whom are you going to have to give an account after 120 years.
I remember Rabbi Pete saying something about that.
So these are the 3 things that will take away your appetite to want to sin. It will bring you a feeling of awesomeness towards the one above, and you won't even have the Yetzer Hara to sin. That's what a chassid wants. So that's a perfect mishnah, fits perfectly into Pirkei Avot. But this mishnah that we're learning today does not. Let's see what the Rebbe says here. The Al-Derech, what mishnah really makes sense in Pirkei Avot? Al-Derech, like Ha'ayara, the lesson, the directive, the mishnah Harishayna b'Perek in the first mishnah of chapter 3. Quote, Histakel, gaze at, reflect, ponder, think deeply about 3 things. The Ein Atah bo l'dei Avera, you won't come to sin. You won't come l'dei Avera, to the hands of sin. Even that which leads you to sin. Not the sin itself, even that which could lead you to sin, i.e. the temptation, that also you won't have. So this we understand, it makes sense. Why it's doing in Pirkei Avos? Because Shuras Hadin, the letter of the law, Michayeves, dictates, obligates one, Rak only, Yehudi lo yasa aveda, that a Jew should not do a sin. The poel in action. But there's no obligation to make sure you don't have a Yetzer Hara. The Alkach, on that comes Chasidus, Mosifa HaMishnah, the Mishnah, as Hanhoga Chasidusid, a behavior that's Chasidish. That a person should be standing and situated in a state of being, which is God-fearing, feeling God's presence. But one should not even get close to sinning. Through the medium, through the intermediary of his boinanut, of reflection, meditation, pondering on three things. And through these three things that you're thinking about, the ein atah bo, you will not even come lidei avera. Okay, that we understand. However, but the lesson, quote, hevei mispal b'shlomo shel malchus, end quote, daven for the well-being of the country, because if not, you're going to see anarchy. L'choira, at first glance, ein lo shum kesher, has no connection lihanhaga shel midas chasidus. Doesn't fit with Pirkei Avos. Oil is zehirus, or this idea of zehirut, which means to be caution, careful, cautious. It doesn't have anything to do with things that are going beyond the letter of the law. It's basic, extremely basic. Adarabba, to the contrary. Shlilas matzav shel chayim below, the negating of the matzav, of the situation of swallowing each other alive. Muchrachas is, you're compelled to that, you're bound to that. Al pi tzivuyim hachi chamurim b'Torah, based on the most severe and harsh commandments of the Torah. Murder, are you kidding? It's not just al pidin. It's something that moral, to be moral and ethical. So what's it doing in Pirkei Avos? Base, the second question. Why does he use the words a man would swallow his friend alive? Why swallow? Why not just say rob or kill, murder? What is the exact phraseology, language? Ish esre'eu chayim b'loin. Haloshin haragila v'hapshuta, the conventional wording and the simple way of expressing, anarchy, murder. B'mikra zehi hariga. Hariga would be the Hebrew for murder. Kaloshin hakosuf, like Avram or Yitzchak rather told Avimelech, the reason why I said she's my sister, not my wife, because ein yiras halakim, there's no fearing of God in this country here in Egypt. V'haraguni, and they would kill me. No one fears authority, so there is hariga. So we see in the Chumash the word killing is used, not swallowing. Like gzela, or if it's not murder, it's just robbery. So say gzela. Gzela means to steal, to rob. Imakavona kan the gazlanut. If we mean here monetary anarchy, so let's say robbing. Or the like. Why do we use a new, non-conventional term of chayim below, that you will swallow this person alive? I have to stop here for a second. I may be able to digress a little later about this. My brother has a very powerful, I spoke to him yesterday. But it's not really, I'll just mention what he said, what he says very briefly. Who's this? What's your name? Esther Hamalka. Where are you from? Wait a minute, you look familiar. Oh, yeah. So you're here just today? I hope you always have time. Good to have you here. Pleasure. My brother mentioned there are 4 people who are called dead. What's the definition of life? This is a side point. I always digress. Life is plural. Chayim. Chayim is life, but it's plural. What does that mean? That you don't have any relationship with another person, life isn't worth living. You have to have companionship. Famous story in Gemara with a person who slept for 70 years, then when he woke up, no one recognized him. He said, either I have chavrusa or misusa. Either I this or I die. If I don't have any companionship, no one knows me, I can't live. It's one of the reasons. There are a lot of deeper reasons. So the 4 people, the Mitzorah, leper, the person who has problems with his skin, and then there's the ani, the poor person, the person who has no children. What's the fourth one? No children, the ptsora,
Embarrassed.
the ani, huh?
Embarrassed.
No, it's not that. That's, who's considered a poor person who has no children?
Oh, blind.
Blind. There you go. So he titrates that these four have problems with relationships with people. He connects these four people with the inability to see another person. And I'll learn the Sichos a little further, and you'll see how what he says actually fits into the Sichos too. But let me first continue further. It's novel. He gets these novel ideas, and everything fits beautifully. Comes to the definition of poor doesn't mean poor monetarily; it means poor knowledge. You see, having no children means not being able to continue a relationship that doesn't continue for very long. It has no aftermath. It doesn't last. A not lasting relationship.
It's interesting because I would argue that, like, at least for me, I'm not blind, but like I have bad vision, but I can see people deeper because I'm not clouded by just the physical appearance.
Yeah, we're not talking about blind in that sense. We don't mean
Okay.
physical blindness. The blind, just like the poor
Yeah.
person is not poor. We don't mean poverty in Gashmis, we mean poverty in Ruchnis. The blind also, according to his beer, is not blind
Yeah.
that way. It's blind in being able to recognize another person, which has to do with the Sikh over here.
Nice.
You can't see another person's individual life. That person is I don't want to give it away, but you see the Sikh later on, it'll have a lot to do with the idea of blindness.
I'll wait for the ending. of
You wait for the
story.
ending. Okay, good. Okay, Gimel. Kol hanyonim ba'olam. All the matters of this world are dependent on us, believe it or not. We say Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu, He's our God, and that's how He becomes the Melech HaOlam. Through us, we are the medium. We are the brain of the world. Brain is the depository, the reservoir of life throughout the rest of the body. It distributes to the rest of the body, but the soul rests in the brain. The brain is the place of congregation where the soul congregates, and then from there it spreads. Like Eretz Yisrael is also called, Israel is called the brain of the world. Hashem, is mashgiach, supervises what's going on there mainly, and then from there there's also supervision on a lower level throughout the rest of the world. That's why you feel Kedusha in Eretz Yisrael much more than you feel anywhere else. You feel a direct relationship to Hashem. So the Jewish people are called the head of the world, and through the head, the nervous system, the organism, it affects the rest of the body, which is the rest of the world, the Goyish world, the non-Jewish world. Okay, now look at this. All matters that happen in this world, including anarchy, including Hefkevel, is dependent on the Jewish people. Kakosu is a pasuk that the Rebbe quotes here from Koheles, Ecclesiastes. The entire world is placed in the heart of a Jew. The Jewish heart can not sometimes, but always have an impact on the rest of the world. Mizeh move on. From here, we can understand that if we're talking about anarchy, people swallowing each other alive, whatever that means, we'll soon see. Shall have sharas, the possibility that if not for the fear, the respect for authority, ilmole, if not for, ilmole means if not for, mora'ah, the fear, the respect, the reverence of kingdom, ish es re'eu chayim below, man would swallow his friend alive. Kayemes gam chas v'sholem etzel Yehudim. It seems like this must have to do with Jews as well. If the Jews would be 100% perfect, then the non-Jewish world would also, this wouldn't happen to them either. But Adarabah, it's not just that we also have it, but because of us, that's why the rest of the world can go crazy. But Adarabah, kitotza mishum hayrozu, as a direct consequence of following this directive, al gidei Yehudim, through Jews, nifal, it affects Gam Ba'olam, also the world around us, the non-Jewish world. In other words, it starts with us. So we're the generators, we're the pioneers of this whole idea of anarchy. That's very strange. At first glance, it seems to be hard to understand. Tamua means it raises wonder. Ketzad, how? Shayich Lomar, you have a copy of? Ketzad Shayich Lomar, how is it possible to say, Odot Yehudim, about Jews, Shalam wrote, in spite of the fact of kama v'kama tivuya Hashem. So many clear directives and commandments and orders that are so clear about behaving yourself that if not for the fear of the kingdom, hare below moro shal malchus, of the goyish, I mean the governor, or the leader, or the president, or the king, or whatever of the non-Jewish world, yuchal Yehudi livloa, a Jew can swallow his friend alive. Below stam, not any Jew, your friend. Below stam adam nosam, not just any other person, but even your own friend. You can swallow alive. And especially the question is asked even stronger, as we said before. What we're speaking about here is not a Jew who's learning the basic stuff. A Jew is learning Pirkei Avos. A Jew learning Pirkei Avos can easily come to this. How is that possible? We're talking about a Jew who's learning this Masechta. Because he wants to be a chassid. Someone who's on a level who wants to go beyond the letter of the law and to be a chassid, Hayim Zakuk, who does this person of all people need lahazharot, this warning? Hevei mispal b'shloma shel malchus kidei lahaftiach, in order to guarantee shelo yiyeh bolei Yisrael. What's going on over here? Further on. So the Rebbe's next question is, what's the kesher? What's the relationship between the first part of this Mishnah and the second part? The second part is about two people learning Torah, two people sitting and not discussing Torah. Oh, terrible. If it's discussing Torah, it's wonderful. What's the flow? That's an obvious question. After the saying of you gotta pray hard for the well-being of the government, the Mishnah continues, the same Mishnah. It's not a second Mishnah, it's the same Mishnah. Nemar Mishnah Zu, in this Mishnah Zu, in the very same Mishnah, says the following. Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian says, two people that are sitting, and amongst them there's no Torah being discussed. This is called a sitting of scoffers, bunch of clowns, scoffers who are not really serious about anything. We look at them as scoffers, as mockers of Judaism. If they're sitting and not learning, powerful statement. We're going to see the words of ein beinehem, between them. What does between them mean? Just say ein. Obviously it means between them. The two people learning, the two people are sitting and they're not discussing Torah. What is the emphasis of the word beinehem, between them, supposed to mean? That we'll see later. That will be a key to the answer to the question we're asking, but we don't see it yet at this point of the Sichos. And between them there is Torah learning. A whole different story. The Shekhinah dwells. Says the Rebbe, Kvar Dumer Palmim rabbis, we have spoken many times in the past, and the Rebbe quotes in footnote 12 where he spoke about it in the past. We spoke so many times. Ki chalukas hamishnayos, the breakdown, the division of the Mishnah, where a Mishnah ends, where the next Mishnah begins, is not just arbitrary. Hina miduyekes, it's with precision, it's perfect. Davar hanegeya, it's so important that it really has ramifications in halacha. Davar hanegeya lahalacha lemaisa. What's the halacha? I just mentioned to you before we started with the Sichos. The mikra in a case, echad mikalish isha, a man is marrying a woman, and he says to her, I will be married, you'll be married to me, your husband and wife, on one condition, al manas, on the condition, sha'ani yodea lishanot. I know how to learn Mishnah. I'm a Mishnah expert. In Hebrew, sha'kidushin hein b'tnai, the marriage effectivity, the validity of the marriage is contingent, is dependent, b'tnai, shehu yodea mishnayot, that he knows Mishnah. How many Mishnahs do you have to know, according to one opinion? Yesh lomar, according to some, shema speak, it is sufficient, lodas shalosh mishnayot. If you know 3 Mishnahs, you're an expert already. Now, if that's the case,
By heart?
no. You understand them? Not word for word. You are well versed in that Mishnah. They have to do it by heart. Now, it's important. If 3 is 3, so now we put these 2 different parts of the Mishnah in one Mishnah. It only counts as 1. It really should count as 2. And you would think, oh, it is 1 more. No. This long Mishnah is only 1 Mishnah. Can't count it as 2. So if you want to be married to this woman, you got to know 2 Mishnahs besides this Mishnah. But this Mishnah is really 2. It's 2 separate subjects. Seemingly, it's not 2 separate subjects. We don't know why. The idea of 2 people sitting and not learning has something to do with anarchy in the world. What? What's the flow? The Rebbe will explain the flow very beautifully. And it'll all be based on the wording, swallowing your fellow friend alive. What is that supposed to mean? Not kill, not steal, not rob. What kind of anarchy are we talking about? Swallowing each other alive. That's the key to the whole Sichos. Now, the Ein Muvan, it's not understood. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a part here. Yesh Omrim, there are some that say that because of the importance of halacha to know where a Mishnah begins and where a Mishnah ends, ki mishum kach, for this reason, kolal admur hazaken es mesechet avot b'siduro. The Alter Rebbe put the whole mesechta of Pirkei Avot in the siddur. Why is it in the siddur? It's not part of the davening. They ladas to know the halacha of ofen chalukat hamishnayot, to know the breakdown, the way how you divide Mishnahs. The Alter Rebbe wanted us to understand, it's important for us to understand where the Mishnah ends because it has ramifications in halacha. And in the siddur, you also have a lot of halacha too. The Alter Rebbe put a lot of laws, siddur laws. And even though it's not a halacha in the siddur, but it's a halacha related to marriage, and he felt that it's important to put it in the siddur also. Now, the Ein Muvan. What's the hemshech? What's the flow? What's the continuation of the second part over the first? So Snayim v'yoshvim, how is Snayim v'yoshvim, two people sitting and not exchanging Torah ideas, l'maimer, to the saying, Havei mispalel b'shloma. Sholachei nichtavu, which they're so connected that they had to be written, nichtavu shneim b'osa, the next place, b'osa Mishnah. On the next page, right? Got it? Stop. L'chora, what's l'chora mean? L'chora, who knows? L'chora? Yes. L'chora, at first glance, seemingly. B'hashkafa rishona. Hasvara mechayevet, the svara dictates, she'hamaimer shayich ve'emor yikalel b'mishnah haba. It fits very much more with the next Mishnah. What's the next Mishnah? Rav Shimon Omer. Rav Shimon says 3 people sitting on a table and no one speaks Divrei Torah, it's not good. And what the Mishnah says is not important, but the next part. But we see it's talking about 3 people sitting on a table and not talking Torah. That's very much connected to the end of our Mishnah. So instead of putting the end of our Mishnah together with the next Mishnah, which would be a perfect flow, it puts the end of our Mishnah, 2 people sitting and not learning, with the idea of anarchy that will reign in the world if you don't daven for the sake of peace in the world, for the sake of, you don't daven for the well-being of the country, well-being of the leader of the country. The next Mishnah is related to the second part of the first Mishnah. Shagam Sham was also over there about the people sitting at a table. It's also about Torah learning. Medubar odot ha'ilush al divrei Torah, the chabura, the importance of having a Torah learning at a group. So that fits very well with the Mishnah discussing 2 people. There's 2 people and there's 3 people involved in Torah learning. Habir Bazez, what's the next part? Gimel. Chaim below. What does Chaim below mean? What do you mean swallow each other alive? It doesn't mean to kill anyone. We're talking about a chassid here. No one's going to kill anybody. We don't mean that. What we mean is believing that it's my way or the highway. Especially if you know you're a Rosh Hashiva, you're a teacher and you have a white beard, and you have a hat that's black or grayish because it's dirty, making you up. And Rabbi Greenberg or Majeski, obviously, yeah. He's older than me, he's smarter than me, but you have a lot of chashuva people. And then you have simple people, guys off the street. Guy's not even, really needs help. Guy needs a lot of direction. So you have to help him. It's true. That person has to be, he needs a mashpia. But you can think when you're trying to be mashpia to this person, that person has no individual life of his own. And you look down at that person, and the only way you can ever make it in life is becoming my accessory. Then if I swallow you, what does swallow mean? You become part of my existence. Your existence as an individual doesn't, you better be part of me, otherwise you're finished. It's arrogance. So even though it's true that you are that you're a great learner and you're a great chassid, and that person's mamash knows nothing, and also has character flaws and whatever, and that person is lacking, mamash lacking. So you could think, convince yourself, oh, it's Shem Shemayim, and you know very well deep down, it's not L'Shem Shemayim. It's you like to, that person makes you feel better about yourself. I have another student here. See, I can mashpia on college. Look, I have a lot of followers over here. Everyone needs me. That's called swallowing somebody. That's what we're talking about. I'm not talking about killing anybody. Chaim, you cannot relate to the idea of Chaim, that there's a second person who also has a life. There's no plurality. It's just me. He is, or he or she is part of me, part of my Metzius, validates my Metzius. If you do that, welcome. Welcome to the club. You got to do it my way because you don't have any other way. You're lost. That's arrogance, and that's what we're trying to talk about in Pirkei Avos, not about that kind of. Now, what does it have to do with anarchy in the world? We talked about anarchy in the world. This is for Jews for learning Hasidus. What does it have to do with the rest of the world? So we'll soon see. Here's what Rebbe says: Abir Bazer. Kivon shemesechta avos koilevos mili de Chasidus. So since Mesechta Avos includes matters of Chasidus, mili de Chasidus, so kemoskili as I mentioned before, zoto meres. This means to say, in other words, horaot avor Yehudim hashleimim uzehidim belimud haTorah b'kiyum mitzvahs. Lessons for Jews that are complete, wholesome, and are careful of Torah learning and performance of mitzvahs. What they're missing is only the icing on the cake, rak hanhaga and minas chasidus. It's therefore memela, obviously, consequently, simple and obvious. You don't need to tell a person like that not to steal from another Jew, and certainly not to infringe on the well-being of another Jew, hurting another Jew physically. In Cain, if this is so, now he clearly understands why the conventional term of killing is not mentioned here. We're not discussing that. We're discussing a whole much deeper idea. The exact wording here is swallow. We don't mean, God forbid, to infringe, to steal and hurt and damage someone's life, physical life, or material life, or monetary life, or stealing. No, we're not discussing that. Ritzono, his on top of his second column now on this page. Ritzono, his will is, what he desires is rak chayim below. I want you to live, but live inside me. Shehachayim hametziut v'hamaisim shel Hashem, that the life and the existence and everything the second person does should all be accredited to me, the mashpia. Yivlu b'metziut shalom, should be swallowed into your wholesome existence. That person is an accessory to you. The adarabba, and to the contrary, the fa'amim, sometimes because you truly have a lot of qualities. You're a teacher, you're a mashpia, and everyone comes to you for eitzes. Even when it comes to shalom bayis, people ask you questions about how to have a happy married life. People come to you for everything. You seem to be not only a Torah learner, but also an expert in matters of common sense issues as well. You're a therapist, and you're also careful of mitzvahs. You daven long. It's not true. And that could be all the more reason why you have to be very careful not to believe that someone on a much lower madrega shouldn't be just an accessory to you and have no individuality at all. That sometimes, having all these qualities sometimes could fool a person in thinking that it's okay to have the other person completely subservient to you and having no other, life of his own, as if he's worthless. He or she is worthless. So the Rebbe says, Adarabba, at times, because of the qualities that one has, on the one hand, you're perfect in your Torah learning and your mitzvah doing. I also mentioned some other things you might be good in. Worldly matters you're good in. People look up to you. And on the other side of the spectrum, look at all the chesroinus that person has. Chesroinus harabim, true faults that the other person has that you're trying to be mashpia on. Shuhuroa eitzel hasheni. Bifrat, especially im halo. Halo means the other person. Im halo, if that person ish pashut, is a real simple person in the knowledge of Torah. Oy af luka, he's also damaged, like malchus. Loke means the word, I don't have to get the word, it's the word I don't have, it escapes me right now, but it means to be hit. Beheder the heroes became a mitzvah, with the absence, with the lack of being careful in performance of mitzvahs. Hey Nayla, it's these qualities that you have and the lack of qualities that person has, or the lack of qualities that person has. Hey Nayla, it's these distinctions between you and that person that bring sometimes and compel this person lahasik to come to the conclusion. Lahasik means to come to a final conclusion. For the good of that person, you better just lose yourself completely to me, become part of my existence. That would be the greatest chus for that person. If he would only be swallowed and never have a life of his own, just always follow me. Now, sometimes there is a need for that. But again, as I said before, what is your motive? Do you really care for that person, or do you care about yourself? You care about your prestige. I have so many mishpoyim, I have so many patients, and so many this and so many that. So you want the person, that's the problem. If you really mean the other person's well-being, you'll recognize that person as a person also, by the way, no matter how low the person is. You can be humble enough to believe that that person also probably has some qualities that I don't yet see, but it's there. The fact you can't see any qualities in another person shows because of your arrogance. It's not because of chassidus, because you're so great. So that's what Pirkei Avos is saying. If you really want to follow, to be a chassid, you got to get rid of this notion that the other person has to be, has to go your way, and there's no other way to go. Now, how do you get rid of that problem? So by davening for the well-being of the country, what does that really mean? It doesn't mean the president or the king. It means something much deeper. And you have to daven. This is something that doesn't go so easy. No matter how much you're going to understand that you might be wrong, you got to humble yourself a little bit. It's going to be very hard to maintain that humility. You got to daven hard to Hashem, even though you're a chassid, to get rid of that problem that you might have. So let's see it inside. To negate, to remove this notion, this sensation, this way of behaving, that everyone has to be just part of you. It's not sufficient to have logical explanations for it. Since if you really use logic, we're not talking about a shaita and a rasha, a fool who thinks he has qualities, and an evil person who leads people astray, and a gas ruach, someone who's arrogant and just thinks about it. We're not talking about someone like that. It can't be like that. Yesh mokum lekazutaina. There's a room for a good claim. Sof kol sof, since we're not discussing a person who's a shaita and a rasha, who thinks he has qualities and really doesn't. The person really has great qualities. Sof kol sof, ultimately, harehu gadol b'Torah. He's a great person who became a mitzvah, and there's no doubt about that. Ubo b'zman, and at the same time, re'eyu rachok me'od. His friend that everyone can see is very distant from Yiddishkeit, from his madrega. Harei sha'cheshbon amiti umuvus al Torah. This cheshbon is true and based on Torah. The Rebbe brings in footnote 17 some sources. It says, Rashi brings it, connect yourself to a Talmud Chacham, and through that Talmud Chacham you'll be connected to Hashem. So you see a lot of the ideas of following a Rebbe, following a leader. There is some truth to it. So you can easily make the mistake that if you have these qualities, that person, should really follow you and be very close with you. So that it's very difficult. You really have to, you can't rely on logic, because logic can sometimes lead you to a conclusion, what I'm doing is okay. So you need more than logic. You need more than just pondering. You need prayer. Therefore, on the next page, even if they're going to clarify and explain to him that you really have to go humble yourself a little bit more. True, yes, no question that you have tremendous talent of being mashpia and you can really help a lot of people, but you can't look at that person as a nobody. You still might not be able to liberate yourself, free yourself from this type of notion. Hard to get rid of. What type of notion? That your friend, your friend has to be null, void his existence, void his way of thinking, and to be swallowed into your way of thinking. And the best advice of how to affect within oneself the removal of such a notion mentioned before, Kideboy as should be, Ulakayim es Hayros HaMishnah, to fulfill what the Mishnah tells us in this Mishnah. Have mispalel b'shlomo shel malchus. We'll soon see what that means. Davening for the well-being of the country. It doesn't mean the country literally. We're not discussing, we are discussing the leader of the country, but we don't mean him or her, the leader. We mean what that leader represents. That leader has a star, Lamailo. Every leader, every king has what we call a counterpart in the upper realms. And that counterpart has another counterpart. And it keeps on going until it hits the Melech Malchi HaMelachim, God himself. So there's a little bit of Hashem, the power of Malchus Shamayim in every single king, even Russia. Even there's some element, although it's camouflaged, that's there. And if you're a chassid, as we'll soon see, you are able to see the Melech Malchi HaMelachim through this Melech Basar Adam, this mortal king, mortal president or leader. You see an aspect of Melech Malchi HaMelachim. We're talking about that. Shlomo Shel Malchus means not just the king as an individual king, but what he represents. He represents Malchus Shamayim. That can make a bracha when you see a king. I don't know about a president, but not long ago, when Trump was, by the Jewish gathering, Yossi Jacobson made a bracha there. I don't know if he asked for it, but there's a bracha you make when you see a melech, because there's Malchus Shamayim that's distributed to all kinds of leaders, even a president, I guess, president of the greatest country in the world, that was a superpower. So it's something. It says about a king. I don't know if we call him a king. And, some people politically would really not at all want to call him anything, but that's not what I'm getting into right now. The idea is that through a Melech Basar Adam, you can laugh all you want about him. That Melech Basar Adam was appointed from on high and has special powers taken from Hashem. So we're talking about not a person who's davening just for the king, thinks just about the king's person. He's thinking about something much deeper. He's thinking about let the fact that he reflects Malchus Shamayim be expressed through him. Let people sense and the awe of what he represents, not him personally. That's what we're talking about here. And that will make you humble, because when you're thinking about a supreme being, Melech Malchi HaMelachim, the king of kings of all kings. The last king refers to mortal kings. The king of kings refers to the spiritual counterpart in heaven that every king, every Sar has. Like Sar Shel Esav, they all have their energy in Lamaila. And they get their energy from another source, and from another source, and from another source, all the way up high until we reach Hashem himself, Melech Malchi HaMelachim. So we're davening to be able to impress upon the king down here and the world around him. They should feel the awesomeness of what they're reflecting, of the Hashem himself. And when you have that feeling of Melech Malchi HaMelachim is around, you sense that in the Malchus, it brings humility, as we'll see, and that will lead you to, when you sit and learn Torah with another person, first of all, it'll get rid of the notion that that person is my accessory. It won't allow you to feel I can swallow someone, because who are you anyways? Compared to Hashem, you're equal to that person. You're equal. Not like some people think. The distance between a simple person off the street to a big Talmid Chacham, as great of a distance as that is, the same distance is between that Chacham and the Eibishter. No. Relative to Hashem, the Chacham Gadol, the Tzaddik, and the Ish Pashut are equal. They're equal. So it's not like here's the Ish Pashut, here's the Tzaddik, and here's Hashem. Equal distance. No, here's Hashem, and you and the Ish Pashut are one. You're exactly one. You're not any better than him. But when do you feel that way? When you have the presence of Melech Malchi HaMelachim in your mind. And that's what we're davening for. Mispalel b'shlomo shel malchus. I should be able to sense in what's going on in the world out here. I should feel Hashem's presence even in a world that seems to be a very non-Jewish world. Feel God's presence, then you will also never have that thought to negate someone else's existence and swallow that person. But you got to daven. It's not easy to maintain it. You got to daven hard that you should be able to see Hashem through worldly leadership. Okay, let's see it further. Omer Razal, Malchusa Iyar ke'ein Malchusa Dirakia. HaMalchus be'eretz ba'olam hazeh domer le'malchus shamayim shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does that mean? Kiyadua. Malchusa Iyar nemsheches and mishtalsheles me'malchusa Dirakia. The Melech Kan Lamata, this king down here, yes, Shoresh Besar Shaloi Lamaila, has a Shoresh, has a root source in the Sar, has an agent who's responsible for the king down here. And Beshoresh Hasar Atzmo, the Sar himself has another Sar, Bedarga Gavoa Yoster, on a higher level. Kach Lamailo, Lamailo Yoster, Gavoa Mial Gavoa, there's one above the other, and each one is like a Shomer for the one below. A Shomer is something that, a Shomer is a guard. A guard always has control over that which he's guarding, otherwise he can't be a guard. And then there's the guard of the guard, and the guard of that guard, until you reach Hashem. Okay. Then move on. From here we can understand when there's a peace reign in the world, that the Yara is going right, and people are respecting the king, and there's no anarchy at all. And if it's bishlemus means they're not just not fighting each other because they're afraid of what might happen. They really feel the presence of a higher authority. How does that happen? So the Rebbe is going to soon say in one of the footnotes, it's not possible without the help of a Jew for a goy to have fear of a king that's not based on fear of punishment. It will always be fear of consequence. The only way a non-Jew could fear the king, not because of what might happen if he doesn't, but rather fear the presence of a leader and respect that leader, is through the Jew hard avodah of davening and praying that we should be able to sense the Eibishter through a malchus shel mata. When a Jew negates, introduces the idea of the Eibishter in the whole world, that influences. We know that Jews influence the whole world. That spills over into the non-Jewish world. That what they normally are not shaykh to, what they normally can't feel. Hashem's presence in the king. Can you expect the goy to feel that? For him, it's just another leader, that's all. And either they'll respect him or not respect him, or they'll be afraid or not be afraid. But to feel the awesomeness of Shamayim, Malchus Shamayim, that only Yid can do. Yid learning Pirkei Avos can do. And even he has to daven hard to reach that level. Once you do that, however, it spills over and the non-Jewish world starts also respecting their leaders. Not because they respect the leader so much, respect what the leader is representing. Not the person, but the seat that they have. It's a manifestation of God's leadership, and that's what they respect. That's what they, So it's not fear of consequence. Much more than that. It says here like this: when a Jew is on the level of a chassid, and therefore he's able to see things, see very deep. He's able to see things in its fullest measure. When he's davening for the well-being of the country, he means much more than that. And not just senses, but muchashis. See, sometimes you gain the fact that you're looking at a mortal king can help, because the king you see physically with your eyes. If you can see something with your eyes and look at that person, you see that person not with your brain, but with your eyes, and you meditate that this person has qualities that come from, even though the person is not a very big tzaddik at all, he can be a dictator and a tyrant, but you can see something about him is a manifestation of Elokus. Wow, that's much harder than to see Elokus directly in a way. In fact, it says in Chassidus, there's a mile of learning halacha nigla over Chassidus. What's the mile? Chassidus is all imagined. But when you learn nigla, you know what you're talking about. I know what Shabbos is, I know what Malacha is, I know what this is, I know what that, so I can see it. So you have a more direct, clear, straightforward relationship to what you're learning. So too, businessmen can have a deeper relationship with Hashem than a guy learning in basic medicine all day. Because when you're just learning about Hashem. When you're out there, you see Hashgacha Pratis, you see with your eyes, things that the guy doesn't see in the base medrash. He's just learning about it. Okay, great learner, but it's all in the mind. This guy sees with his eyes. He sees a lakus with his eyes. I know it's camouflaged through everyday events, but you're seeing Hashem working through nature. And that you can see with your eyes. So in a way, you're seeing Hashem with your eyes. In a way, you're actually having an experience of a visual sight of Hashem. Same thing over here. If you're able to see, looking at the king, you're seeing right through him, where he comes from. Seeing all the madrigas, that's powerful. It's more powerful than just having a relationship with Hashem directly without. So it's you look at a very high madriga over here. A yid who's davening to reach the madriga where you can see through Malchus Shel Mata, a Malchus Shel Mayim, a Malchus of Melech Malchi Amlochim. When you got to that madriga, there's no worry in the world that you're going to ever think for one moment that my friend can be an accessory to me. Because who am I anyways? You're standing in awe. People going for Yechidus, two Chassidim didn't like each other, didn't get along with each other, but if they would be together, they'd stand in awe, and they didn't become best friends, but they lost themselves to a higher authority, to a Rebbe. And no one felt any kind of, arrogance at all when you walked in there. You lost sensation of any feeling. So when you have this constant, feeling of the presence of a Melech Malchi Amlochim through what's going on in this world, you get to a level where it becomes very tangible. That it becomes tangible. Your fear of Hashem is not in the books, it's not theoretical, it's real. You feel it in your heart. And then there's no chance in the world that you'll ever fail in the test of thinking that another Jew should be just your accessory and just be swallowed into your existence. Now we get to the next Mishnah, how it's connected. What does it mean? Shnayim sheyoshim, two people are sitting and there's no between them. They're not sitting and doing nothing. They're learning Torah. Did you hear Charusa? The one guy is teaching, and he's not interested to hear what the other guy has to say. And while the other guy's asking a question, he's thinking of how he's not even hearing his question. Your questions are, even your questions are a joke. I'm not going to even listen to your questions. The only reason why I have you here is I can't talk to myself. I need an audience. So, I'll talk, but you're not here. You're just, it's me. I'm the one who's teaching, and you're the one who's just sitting here, and either you understand or not, but anything you're going to offer, it's not worth for me to even listen to. You don't believe that person can even ask a question that might, throw a monkey wrench in everything you said. That's called ein beineihem. Between them, there's no exchange. It's just one-way street. I teach and you listen, so I don't talk to the walls. Yeah, I saw a couple verses like that. Not here. The guy is just asking, and it's like doesn't even listen. The guy's not even listening. You're not even listening what the other person just asked. When the guy asked, "Can you repeat what I just said?" Yes, I can repeat, but I don't even want to do that. You can't repeat because you weren't even listening. Why would you? You listen to yourself, thinking of how I can continue, and have this guy keep quiet already. So that's called two people that are learning, but they're not learning as two, learning as one. There's no exchange. That can happen amongst us also. We talk to people, and it's just, I need you to talk. I just need you to vent. I want to vent, and I need another person to listen to me. I'm not interested in your ideas of what I should be doing. I'm just venting. And can you listen to me at least? That's called two people, but they're not two people. There's no give and take. There's no exchange. It's a one-way street. When will that happen? If you're lacking in the fear of Shemayim, if you're lacking in the idea of Malchus Shemayim, then you believe I'm the one who gives, you're the one who receives if you're lucky, if you can understand my depth. You probably can't, but I just need you to listen. But I can't talk to myself. I feel stupid by talking to myself, so I need an audience. That's the flow. What are they called? Scoffers. They're mocking. Who are they mocking? Not God. They're mocking the person who's talking, and it could very well be a two-way. They're both of them think that way. I think you're nothing. You think I'm nothing. Each one's I see that, and they start hating each other. It gets into a machlekes. They start really, and it gets personal. There's two people. Each one is the only one. Each one is laughing at the other one's knowledge. They're a bunch of scoffers. That's what it says. You're laughing, ridiculing. Hope he even listens. Probably won't even understand a word I'm saying. No, you don't get what I'm saying. I'll repeat it over again. And they start becoming it gets very personal and very condescending, extremely condescending, and you laugh at that person. You start laughing at them. I did it myself a few times. I remember it hurts. When you feel like you get, you don't understand what I say. Can you listen for? Can you maybe listen to me? He answers back, can you maybe listen? They're both going back and forth. I just had this experience last week with somebody I argued about understanding the Rebbe Sicha. And I realize I'm ridiculing him, and he's ridiculing me. And he probably says, listen, we're both not listening to each other. Let's stop. I'm not getting anywhere. And he was right.
Wow, he said that?
He said that. So I realized that I was, it became an ego thing. You lose it. You started with understanding what the Sichos was all about, and then you start getting, no, I have to eat. You know what? He has a point over there, but he can't be right. No. You start, no. You don't understand what I'm saying, and you don't get it. And you start laughing, and such a condescending way. I start laughing. Let me try one more time, but I'm going to give up. The last time, okay? And I realized that what I was saying was not a refutation to what I wasn't refuting him very well. I realized that, you know what? He's probably right. It's a natural thing, I'm not no big Catholic over here, and I experienced it myself. There was two people, and he was also doing a little bit of that too. But at least he had the recognition of being humble enough to admit that I did. That's the problem. You're learning Torah, but you're not learning together. There's no exchange. There's no back and forth. If there is a back and forth, the Shekhinah loves when two people exchange. The Shekhinah loves opposites. That's why it says a man and a husband and wife are peaceful with each other. They're two opposites. And they're living a harmonious life and loving each other and caring, not using each other out like a business partner. Each one wants to make the other one happy. And your happiness is my happiness, two half souls. The Eibusher loves that. He is in love with combining opposites. He is a trick maker. He loves when two opposites unite and become one. Men and women are very opposite. Don't worry about that. They're very, very different. We discussed that in the previous class. And real true peace, not for your sake, for the other person's sake, for the sake of, you're both working on the same team. Not the man, and then we'll see. No, you're two partners serving a God. The way to have shalom bayis is by believing that it's not between what I say, it's not what you say. It's not, we are both players in a team called Hashem makes the rules. And when you satisfy Hashem's rules, you become a good wife to Hashem, then the wife and the husband down here also get along very well. If you're good, if you follow his rules, because normally there's no way, it's not supposed to make any sense why husbands and wives get along. I'm not trying to scare anybody. It's not normal. It's only normal if you follow the one who likes to combine and unite opposites. So there's shalom bayis also to come around, not just shalom between people. It has an impact on everyone, everything. But this notion that I'm, of course I am what I am, but what am I? It's all the Eibusher, it's all the presence of God that I even feel when I look at a president down here. I can sense it also. I'm not blinded by that. And it's interesting, it also connects to marriage too, because the chassan and kala, we were told that a Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, it's a love story. People thought that Shlomo Melech was obsessed. It's like a soap opera. Some people thought that Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, he wasn't the way, wasn't a very clean man. And it's so wrong. So the question is, why do they have to do that? Why do they have to give metaphoric, analogies with different parts of the body of a woman and a man? Why don't you just get to Hashem and the Jewish people? He meant it as a mashal. Get to the point. Why do you have to make people believe that something's wrong with you, that you're obsessed? But they missed the whole point. The whole point is that he was able to see through a man and woman, their physical bodies, physical intimacy. He was able to see right through that. Hashem, Jewish people. He saw Hishtalshalos. He was able to see right through that. Seeing through married couple, what they're doing in bed, to see the Eibusher and the Jewish people, to see Lamaila. Marriage does not pull a person down, it can lift you up, it can raise you. That's why it's called Holy of Holies. Shir Hashirim is not only holy like the rest of Tanakh, it's called, Rabbi Akiva says, Kodesh Kadoshim. You could even be holy while you're involved in things that normally pull people down, could pull you down. It raises you up. Holy means I don't get involved in such things. I'm in a different world. I'm separated from the world, a hermit. And double holiness means, no, I'm in the world, involved, living a married life, and I'm able to see through that married life a lakus. That's even greater than seeing a lakus without being married. Because if you're able to see through what husband and wife physically are about and see through that how it's a histalshalos, a chain reaction of what's going on in the Milo, that's much deeper. That's why a Kohen Gadol had to be married in order to enter the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He wasn't married, he's disqualified. The whole year round, fine. A regular Kohen, we don't care. A Kohen Gadol, the holiest of holy of people, on the holiest of days, in the holiest place in the world, had to experience in his own life, personal life, holy of holies. Being married, not once upon a time married, presently married, and yet seeing through all this, through a relationship, a physical relationship, with pleasure, both sides, how that's a manifestation to a whole bunch of levels in between of God and the Jewish people in a having a love affair between Hashem and the Jewish people. Like Kedusha. So to see Kedusha is something that's so hard to see Kedusha that's Kodesh HaKadoshim. What I've been saying here is, just for the Sichos, is that after we've said that you're mispala, you're davening, B'Shleima Shel Malchus, and having an impact on the non-Jewish world, it's so potent by you that you're able, it spills over, even the non-Jews are able to sense in their leader something more than the leader. Now, when you sit down and learn with your friend, you're going to learn as an exchange of two people, not one person. And you're just here to serve me, just here for me to talk to somebody. It happens. I'm telling you, it happens. And rabbis do that also. I've seen that a lot. It says the Israeli Talmud Yerushalmi, the Israeli sages, learning the Gemara, were very careful to be respectful, even to be very, very careful not to say anything that's insulting to their chavrusas, to their friends. They were very, very respectful. In Bavli, you don't see that. You see mamish, they're fighting in it. They also mean l'shem shamayim, but it almost sounds like it's personal. You probably didn't get a good night rest when you said this thing. They say they derogatory statements they make. The Ravid and the Rambam also. The Ravid says about the Rambam that if he would be, if Eliezer Eben Avram would hear what you said about him, he would take you and shoot you with 60 rods of fire. About the Rambam. Okay. Or these words are words of a child. And Rambam says if the person believes in physical God, then you're not B'Kodesh. I know people who know just as much as you do, Rambam, and they say that God can have physical form. The Ravid says that on the Rambam, and he says, the Ravid. I'm just giving examples. We went out of time right here.
Everyone has this.
Okay. Anyways, have a wonderful day. I have to finish the. Who else is not here? Mushka's here.
Yeah.
Sarah was here. Rivka is not here, right? Sofa Gula and Ched was here. Was late. Sarah's here. Rivka, Shirka. No. Rivka. Rivka Vendetska, I mean.